The Checkmating transmission line is energized. Federal government appeals to Nigerians to protect national assets.
Inter-Ministerial Committee for 2022 Democracy Day celebration inaugurated.
That Chief Justice of Nigeria advises judicial officers to resist pressure by litigants to compromise their judicial decisions.
Judicial officers are enjoined to have a proper grasp of the law, practice and procedure, in addition to mastering the art of judgment writing.
Good morning, Nigeria. Today we shall discuss checkmating corruption in the electoral process.
All right. Yes. Nigeria's electoral process is on fire. It's beginning to be heightened. And that's as political parties prepare for their various primaries. Kinsley?
Now, aspirants for the various elective positions have intensified their engagements, consultations, and other activities to woo party members and delegates to vote for them during the forthcoming primaries.
One major issue that is of concern to many key players in Nigeria's electoral process is the use of money to get position of authority. Now, that is to say, aspirants are literally buying their way into offices.
While this has already started playing out, some would argue, with the high cost of the expression of interest and nomination fees for the various elective positions for at least the two major political parties. And this has been generating quite some reactions from amongst Nigerians, including some of the aspirants.
Indeed, and some analysts also have noted that though money is indeed a huge factor in Nigerian politics, but they also say that lack of control and regulations towards its display as it is now in the current situation in Nigeria is a great call for great concern.
Well, there are reports that some politicians have already commenced wooing party delegates by way of inducement, it is alleged, in different ways ahead of the primaries.
So, obviously, worried by this development, alleged development, INEC and some anti-graft agencies say they are partnering to check such corrupt tendencies, of course, in the electoral process. But how far can these institutions go to deal with, this very serious challenge in our electoral history? How patriotic are the party delegates themselves to refuse inducement? How can independent candidacy help checkmate the use of money in the electoral or electoral process?
Well, what mechanisms can the anti-graft agencies also adopt to follow the money, as it were, to ensure that any illicit funds are appropriately tracked and ascertained by whom, and imply that there could be sanctions for such behaviors? Ultimately, how could the political system be sanitized going forward? These are some of the issues we intend to seek answers to as we discuss how to checkmate instances of corruption in the electoral process. So on that note, I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And those issues we've just raised are certainly not new. We've been at them for a very long time. But what is new is the Electoral Act 2022, which has come to improve the electoral process and the electioneering system in the country. I welcome you to the program, as I join Kinsley also to say good morning to all of you wherever you're watching from. The program is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the NTA broadcasting from Abuja, the nation's capital. We have our complimentary segments, and they will come much later in the course of our program. For now, we have Frama Panyi with the highlights of the morning news. Frama, good to see you. It's been quite a long time.
Indeed, it has been a while, Claire. Good morning. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. We begin with power. Federal government says the Odukpani Ikot Ekpene 330 kV double circuit transmission lines in Akwa Ibom have been energized after the completion of re-erection of the vandalized tower and repair of lines. A statement by the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, reveals that evacuation of more than 400 megawatts stranded power being generated from the Odukpani power plant has commenced for onward delivery to Cross River State and its environs. The transmission tower was vandalized last month, leading to collapse of national grid, thereby causing nationwide power outage. The federal government appeals to Nigerians to work with TCN and security operatives to ensure that the fight against vandalism is won, requesting that every community hosting installation be more attentive to activities around transmission towers. Innovation and resilience have been identified as key factors in repositioning the aviation sector globally, especially its reliance on aviation fuel and the need for digital and contactless passenger experience. This was then the position of the key players at the African Indian Ocean 7th Aviation Week 2022 in Abuja.
Regulators will need to uphold the highest safety standards and rebuild confidence among the traveling public on the safety of air travel.
In the longer term, aircraft will ultimately have to decarbonize. And for that to happen, we need to promote and nurture innovation and move entirely to zero-emission propulsion solutions.
Digitalization and innovation is the only way we can continue to make these initiatives relevant and sustainable while contributing to strengthening safety, security, and facilitation in our region.
Meanwhile, the federal government has inaugurated a 12-man interministerial committee to organize activities for the 2022 Democracy Day celebration on June 12. This year's Democracy Day celebration will be the last to be organized by the Buhari administration.
Some of whom paid the supreme price to restore democracy in the country. It also affords the government an opportunity to showcase its achievements in dealing with myriad of challenges in the social and economic sectors confronting the nation.
First Lady of Nigeria and the Africa First Lady's Peace Mission, Aisha Buhari, has formally received the newly appointed Executive Secretary of the mission, Olediba Wada, in a brief welcome reception organized in her honor. State House correspondent Aliyu Kabir reports that the newly appointed Executive Secretary of the Africa First Lady's Peace Mission, who hails from Gambia, is a strategic analyst. She is also an expert in Africa and international development cooperation with over 25 years' experience in the field. Given the background of the mission, which aimed at promoting peace in Africa, the First Lady expressed optimism that going by the vast experience of the newly appointed Executive Secretary, the mission will achieve its target.
Ole Dibawada has been appointed as an Executive Secretary of the African First Ladies Peace Mission in accordance of the standard of ECOWAS and EU and any other international organization standard. She is to take charge of the mission and report back to me to develop strategic plan and activities and the progress of the mission.
This is an opportunity for me to really make visible to expose the work of the African First Ladies Peace Mission, not just in Nigeria, not just across the African continent, but globally as well. To be able to work with partners, both global, continental, and regional, to be able to ensure that the areas of peace building that has hampered this continent will eventually come to an end. And the only people that can do that are the First Ladies.
And on judiciary, Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad, has advised judicial officers in the country to resist the pressure by litigants to compromise their judicial decisions, particularly now that politicking is taking the center stage. He said this at an induction course organized for some recently appointed judges in the country.
Judicial officers are enjoined to have a proper grasp of the law, practice and procedure, in addition to mastering the art of judgment writing. It is not enough to have a good grasp of the law alone. You must also go the extra mile, having the law at your fingertips.
Now, operatives of Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, have arrested the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, in connection with alleged diversion of funds and money laundering activities to the tune of 80 billion naira. A statement from the EFCC says verified intelligence showed that the AGF raked off funds through bogus consultancies and other illegal activities using proxies, family members, and close associates. The funds were said to have been laundered through real estate investments in Kano and Abuja. Now on politics, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has met with Progressives Congress APC delegates in Kwara State ahead of the party's primaries later this month. He promised to capitalize on his experience as vice president in the last 7 years to stabilize Nigeria if given the opportunity to rule in 2023.
And after having learned a great deal from the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, who gave me every exposure to all the intricacies of governing a complex and very diverse country such as ours, I felt that all of what God had given me, all of the experience and knowledge that God had given me within these past 7 years, within which I acted as president on occasion, I felt that it would be important for me to put myself forward to the service of this country.
Still on politics, former Vice President of Nigeria and a presidential aspirant under the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, has pledged to restructure the country if given the opportunity to emerge as president. He made the pledge while addressing PDP delegates, including Governor Ifeanyi Okowa at the Unity Hall, Government House, Asaba.
Unity is number one. You can bring back prosperity, you can create jobs for our teeming young men and women who are leaving the universities. And I said, we then move on to education. Today, our universities have been closed for only goes nowhere.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Claire after this break.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. And time to take a look at trending business stories. We hear that the Federal Inland Revenue Service has named Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Company and NNPC Limited as the most supportive, highest taxpayers. Good for them. All right, let's get all the details with Comfort Amodu.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service (FRS) has named the Nigerian Liquefied Petroleum Gas Company Limited as the most supportive taxpayer, while the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited was listed as the highest taxpayer in the year 2021. Special Assistant on Media and Communications to the Executive Chairman (FRS), Jonas Wojwola, commended the companies for their contribution towards the service, meeting and surpassing the tax collection target of 6 trillion naira in 2021. Others on the list of top-performing taxpayers included Mobil Producing Limited, Star Deepwater Petroleum, MTN Nigerian Communications PLC, among others. In other news, oil prices slipped on Monday, giving up earlier gains as investors took profits after a surge in the previous session, but global supply fears loomed, with the European Union preparing to face in a ban on imports from Russia. At the commodities market, gold appreciated from 3 months' lows as US bond yields weaken, and European and Asian stocks mixed as global markets struggle to gain momentum. With business news, Comfort Amadou.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
All right. Bayo Tebi is right here with us. Bayo, it's a pleasure to see you.
My pleasure too. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let me quickly start. I have 2 papers with me. The Nation. The Nation is laden with the EFCC story. It says EFCC arrests federal government top accountant over 80 billion naira fraud. Now, the writer to that story, money laundering in real estate suspected, and AGF faces allegation of overstaying in office. And you see a picture story of the accountant general right there. Okay, let's take a look at some trending political stories. INEC gives APC, PDP, others deadlines. The riders, parties, and form agency of convention venues, dates, and delegates list to be submitted 7 days to primaries. 7 days to primaries. Okay, I'll just take you just before I get back to the trending stories on the bottom. Let me take you just above the nameplate. Silver talent opt not to resign. I don't know what that means. Silver talent opt not to resign. The details of that story on page 4. Bayo will be talking to us about this. Amechi Enang quit. Okay. Now, Supreme Court to hear appeal on Section 84, subsection 12 on Thursday. You can find details of that on page 27. And teen sues father for refusing to give marriage consent. Teen, that's a teenager, sues father for refusing to give marriage consent. Now, federal government blames tax exemption for revenue loss. Okay, let's look at the picture stories on the front page of the Nation. The first bar, students protesting on the Ilesha-Akure Highway, Ondo State yesterday, and the placards are not legible, so we can't really know what they are saying. Okay, but the other picture stories, University of Ibadan, UI students on the highway, UI students marching in Ibadan yesterday, and it's all about ASU strike, students protesting states. Okay, so those are the stories from the Nation. Again, let's quickly take a look at the Punch. The Punch is dealing with political timetable. It says INEC talks tough as 18 parties fail to conduct primaries. INEC talks tough as 18 parties fail to conduct primaries. No going back on election timetable. June 3 deadline. INEC warns parties. APC orders intensified lobbying as Commission says terminal date for primaries fixed. PDP postpones governor Senate primaries for the third time, cites IPOB's sit at home as excuse. And again, the protest across states, ASU, ex-minister Ford State Varsities protest rocks Southwest and Edo. Plateau community leaders arrested over missing cows and youth protests. Gunmen kills 6, abducts Kanu village head, and engineers widow demands justice. Ford's ritual claim 123 motorcycles seized. Let me just stop. There's so many stories on the front page of the Punch. Bayo, so many.
Yes. Which one do you want me to start with?
Well, I also have the Nigerian Pilot newspaper here.
So he's going to add more.
Below the nameplate of the Nigerian Pilot, you have the following headlines: 34 lawyers in court to defend Deborah's alleged killers. That's on page 6. On page 5, editors vow to defend democracy and press freedom. The story of the Accountant General who's been arrested over allegation of 80 billion naira fraud is the lead for the Nigerian Pilot. And two of the riders there say he allegedly laundered money through bogus consultancies and others. Arrest due to his failure to honor invitations by EFCC to respond to allegations. Inflation hits 16.82%, highest in 8 months. Without borrow, there wouldn't be Rivers and Bayelsa states. That's Governor Diri. Gunmen abduct village head, kill 6 in Kano. Soldiers kill 2 unknown gunmen as Anambra State boys. Bauchi police arrest 3 persons over mysterious death of APC chairman. Airline operators announce flight disruption over scarcity of aviation fuel. Bayo.
Thank you. Let's start with the story about the Accountant General of the Federation that's been arrested by the Economic and Financial Crime Commission over an alleged money laundering to the tune of 80 billion, according to the information published from the coffers of the EFCC. It is alleged that the sums that were preferred were through bogus allies using proxies, family members, and close associates. The funds were said to have been laundered and applied in estate investments in Kano and Abuja. He was actually arrested when he declined several times the invitation of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Railway Corporation is to resume the Abuja-Kaduna train services next Monday, that is May the 23rd. A statement by the Deputy Director of Public Relations of the Railway Corporation says that the return will be for greater security measures that has been put in place. In other words, at the stations and along the track. It also says that measures have been put about passengers that the passenger will have to observe strictly. Among the measures are that passengers would have to provide national identification number, a valid photograph and ID, and also a reachable telephone number. For those who buy ticket online and offline, they too must have to provide what has been described as passenger individual profile or identification data. But the Nigeria Railway Corporation and the Ministry of Transportation says that they are starting the train services, but it does not mean that they have abandoned the unfortunate captors who were captured on the bombing of the train on March 28. It says that a lot of initiatives have gone on, but not everything about security and initiative should be put in the public domain. But they assure Nigerians that government is doing all possible to ensure that they are not only rescued, but rescued unhurt. And the government also added that it will not succumb to threats by any leaders of faceless group who are trying to hold Nigerian citizens to ransom. In the area of criminality, there are indications that sit at home yesterday caused some stir in 2 states, especially Anambra and Imo. 2 gunmen enforcing the sit at home order were gone down at Umuze Road in Urumba local government area of Anambra State. The crime prevention patrol cited them and they engaged them. Also in Imo State, it was reported that the enforcer of sit-at-home were heading towards the palace of the Imo traditional chairman of the Imo Traditional Council, that is Dr. E.C. Okeke, and they were engaged by the police. Later on, the army joined them, and 6 of the hoodlums were also gunned down. But Providence saved persons in the IDP camps in Dalori in Maiduguri. An improvised explosive device was discovered within the precinct of the IDP camp. So they reported to the authority, and the Commissioner of Police, Abdul Umar Said, said that bomb ordnance explosive experts were sent to the, and indeed they confirmed that it was an improvised device. It was safely detonated and nobody was hurt. And that emphasizes the fact that if you see any object that is suspicious, say something and also tell the police to ensure that they all help us to protect ourselves. On the area of withdrawal, some ministers are said to have withdrawn their intention to contest elective posts. As at the last count, at least 3 ministers have been mentioned. But the blueprint is reporting that there are indications that the minister who indicated that they have resigned may not succeed in returning to the Federal Executive Council. The paper says that investigation has shown that the ministers who changed their mind from resignation after the presidential directive may have lost out completely. The paper is saying that presidency sources say that they are told that ministers ought to have resigned 30 clear days before the primaries. And since they didn't do so, the presidency is wary of running foul of the Electoral Act as well as the Constitution and the party's constitution, APC constitution. So there's a dilemma here that those who change their mind may not be admitted to the Federal Executive Council. But so far, they are all in the ambit of speculation. Blueprint is quoting reliable presidential sources. But the Federal Executive Council tomorrow perhaps may give an indication towards that.
In fact, one of the SANs did say that it will be against the Constitution, if they go back to their, to their various offices. Otherwise, they will have to be reappointed also.
But if you didn't tender your resignation, it means you had not resigned. However, they are saying that for having attended the valedictory and be part of it, it means that you have acceded to the fact that you are departing.
Well, I think the controversy, in my view, is unnecessary. Perhaps what has given rise to what would now appear to be some controversy was the step that the president himself took on Friday. And with the greatest respect, that step did not seem warranted in the context of what had happened earlier on Wednesday. That was at the Federal Executive Council, yes, where the president called on members of the council who were interested in elective offices to tender their resignation by following the example of the then Minister of State for Education, Umar Juba, and that such letters should be in on or before Monday, the 16th of May. And today is the 17th. Yesterday was Monday, the 16th of May. I would have thought that the handshake or the farewell ceremony for the departing members of the Federal Executive Council should have taken place today, which is the 17th, after the deadline that the president, as chairman of council, had given. So it was open to anyone who could say, look, I will change my mind. No, I will forge ahead. The Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, was the first to say that he was consulting with his constituents, and he was going to have consultations also with the president on the issue. There was also the National Productivity Award ceremony that took place at the Villa, and Dr. Chris Ngige himself was there. Later, Ngige said he was no longer contesting the presidential primaries of the APC. That's one. And of course, we've had others who have also pulled out. The Attorney General of the Federation, who was earlier speculated to be interested in the governorship of Kebbi, and had also attended the farewell ceremony by the president on Friday, said he was also withdrawing from the Kebbi governorship election. Paul Intalen, Minister of Women Affairs, says she's withdrawing from the senatorial contest in Plateau State, where she had earlier been deputy governor. Timi Prisiba, I understand, has withdrawn. But yesterday, there was firm confirmation that the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, is proceeding. Nothing has been heard about Akpabio and the others. So the key thing is, in my opinion, is as follows. Anyone who had not submitted a letter of resignation by the close of work yesterday, being the May 16th, is deemed not to have resigned his or her appointment, whether or not the person attended the farewell ceremony by the president. And I said, I think it was probably a scheduling issue with the protocol. The president, unless Mr. President, now engagements, I will not be available by today, because if as president, as chairman of council, had given the deadline of May the 16th, which was yesterday, until close of work by yesterday, you wouldn't know who was resigning or who was staying back. And resignation also has to be in writing. Because if you are appointed as a minister or commissioner in a state, you have a letter of appointment. So when you are resigning, you should also resign, and the letter is routed through the secretary to the government of the federation, who is also the cabinet secretary to the president. And
to the appointing authority, yes.
Yeah. So if anyone who has not submitted that letter to the secretary to the government of the federation, in my humble opinion, can very well return to his duty post. Although, I mean, we must also recognize that ministers hold their appointments at the pleasure of the president. Yes.
I'm trying to understand, Kingsley, exactly that part, whether the president, held the farewell valedictory before Monday or on Monday. I really want to understand that part.
He had it last week.
Yes,
he had it last week.
Yeah. What's the wisdom? What's the wisdom in holding it by Monday?
That's why he described it.
No.
I don't say that it's probably an error of protocol. Since there was a deadline which was to end yesterday, that validity session ought to have been held after the deadline.
What does it matter?
That is what he's saying.
Well,
if by that date,
assuming by the date and time of the valedictory
ceremony
get together, it wasn't so much of a ceremony, because they were the only ones who were there. If it's a valedictory session, you would have all other members of cabinet who will also be in attendance. Assuming by that day you already had the resignation letters of those persons who were present at that ceremony, then it will be deemed that, of course, they have tendered their resignation. And by the way, it is also the president's pleasure to say, okay, you have tendered your resignation and reject your resignation. So that's I don't know whether you get the point I'm making. So the tidier thing would have been close of work yesterday. Anyone whose letter was in or who's not in will be deemed to be in or out. And then by today, you could have had a farewell session with those who are departed.
With those who have already departed.
But it must be that all these are in the ambit of speculation, because Blueprint is saying presidency sources. But
those presidency sources are not named. The ultimate thing is that you hold your appointment at the pleasure of the president. And if they return to their duty posts, so let they continue with their job.
Okay. All right. I think we've done much, Bayo. I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
But just to say that the Nigeria Railway Corporation, according to the Punch, may have resumed Abuja-Kaduna train services, but it is also saying that it is stopping early morning, shuttles and night shuttles.
Yes, early morning shuttles and late night shuttles.
Night
No,
shuttles.
sorry, what do you mean by may have resumed?
Well,
But they say they are resuming on the 23rd.
Okay.
But it may have means that they have already started.
No.
Well, I don't.
When they resume, there will not be early morning.
Okay, to resume.
Yeah.
Early morning service and night service.
Okay.
That's right.
Yes, I think I'm wrong. The paper says to resume, so it's still being expected.
That's right. Bayo, thanks a lot for being around. See you again tomorrow. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, get ahead with our item for discussion this morning.
All right, it's already an exciting house just before our conversation. But here is a background to our topic for today. Just less than 3 weeks to the end of submission of candidates for 2023 general elections, various political parties are gearing up for their primaries. Now, one thing that has been of concern to many key players is the issue of corrupt tendencies during the electioneering process. Abdusalam Jubre puts all of this into perspective for us.
The 2023 general election is fast approaching, and the political scene has since heated up with politicking and electioneering activities. By the end of the month of May, various political parties are expected to have concluded their primaries and bring forth candidates that are to vie for different political positions. The race to occupy these political positions has brought together different political players and stakeholders as they try to slug it out with one another in the political game. Some experts maintain that at the heart of the current political activities is financial inducement. They insist that voting, especially during primaries, which is expected to be done by delegates, has often witnessed money-bag politicians deploying funds to induce the delegates. They further observe that the deployment of huge amounts of money by desperate politicians to buy votes, compromise electoral officers, among others, has affected the credibility of Nigeria's elections and negatively impacted on governance. Consequently, the role of money cannot be underestimated or wished away in the conduct of party primaries, emergence of party candidates, as well as elections generally in Nigeria. In a bid to curtail the influence of financial inducements and money politics, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, recently disclosed that it would partner with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, to checkmate campaign finance by political parties. President Muhammadu Buhari also signed into law 3 bills aimed at improving the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing, as well as the proliferation financing framework in Nigeria. How effective will these interventions be towards curbing the undue influence of monetary inducement in Nigeria's electioneering process? The collaboration between INEC and anti-graft agencies to checkmate campaign finance by political parties is new. Can this be effectively executed without external influence or interference? What other measures can be adopted in tackling corruption in the build-up to the 2023 general elections? These and more guests on the program will be speaking to in a moment.
All right, thank you very much, Abdusalam Jubril, for that backgrounder. We have a number of guests with us this morning to discuss issues around the subject matter. First, let's welcome a former member of the House of Representatives, Honorable Ehiozuwa Agbonangima. Is a federal commissioner of the Code of Conduct Bureau, where he is the head of monitoring. Honorable Agbonangima, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to all Nigerians.
Also here with us this morning, and the regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria, Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst. Jide, I'd like to welcome you to the program today.
My pleasure. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. Claire?
Yes, Kingsley. Also joining us here in the studio to discuss the topic is Abubakar Tamino. He's a legal practitioner, also a human rights activist, and former banker to his credit. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you for having me. Always a delight.
Okay, Anwar Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, and also Chairman of Transition Monitoring Group, TMG, is also here with us. Anwar, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
We have Kingsley, I think this is for you.
Yeah, that's a fifth guest who is with us, also a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, the Reverend David Ugolo, Executive Director of the African Network for Environmental and Economic Justice. The Reverend David, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
All right, gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to this conversation. As we all know and have either witnessed or experienced or got to learn, two of the critical factors that often result in defeating the wishes of the electorate would be one, electoral violence, but more importantly, instances of corruption, where either the candidates corrupt the electoral process or officials allegedly collude in the manipulation of results, or voters are induced, what has now come to be known as see and buy. But ahead of the party primaries, which of course are due in just a matter of weeks, there are issues already in the public domain with regard to corruption in the electoral process and how this might be checkmated. Let's begin with Jide Ojo, who is our regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Should we be concerned about corruption in the electoral process from the early signs that we are seeing?
Of course, yes. Thanks for the honor. It's very worrisome. I've been involved in campaign finance tracking since 2007 for the Independent National Electoral Commission. And what we see is very trending, because there's practically no level playing field among the contestants. And when we say corruption in the electoral process, it's not just money. It goes beyond money. Yes, everybody put their eyes on the billions that are spent and all of that. But you know, there is a section, you are a lawyer, Kingsley. There's a section of the electoral that says state apparatus, including the media, should not be spent to the advantage or disadvantage of any of the aspirants. But we know one of things. Some aspirants are run out of town in many states. They cannot access the state media. And that is part of corruption. Some uses vehicles. The whole essence of Section 84, Subsection 12 of the Electoral Act, which is generating a lot of hullabaloo, for which we know the Supreme Court will have the final decision in coming weeks, is based on the premise of trying to create a level playing field. So, what we know as a matter of fact, and what many people do not know, is that Electoral Act 2022 has not even distinguished between an aspirant and candidate in terms of election spending. It's calculated along. In the previous Electoral Act 2010, you talk about, okay, when you become a candidate, that's when what you spent on your campaign, what you spent on your nomination, what your party spent on you, and what you spent before the notice of election was announced will not come into play when you are calculating campaign finance. But now in the Electoral 2022, all that you have spent, even as an aspirant, come into frame. And what we have seen now, with huge number of aspirants going about on consultations, we know after those, initial pleasantries and all of that, when the aspirants are leaving, Their aides are staying behind to say, this is for your cola. This is for your recharge card. And that's where it starts from. Huge resources are expended. We have seen governors, aspirants who have been consulting with delegates. In meeting with those delegates, you also do not go empty-handed. These things are not done on camera. They are done in camera. That when you come to greet, you also leave cola. And this cola is in hundreds of millions that aspirants are spending. But more worrisome is even the attitude of the electorate, the voter, the delegate, who, as you said in the background, encourages the culture of see and buy. The delegates will tell you, matter of fact, if you think you want to have our vote, you know what to do. I recall late Ganifa Emi, when he contested to be governor of Ondo, no, was it president of Nigeria actually? He contested to be president of Nigeria. When he goes to campaign, and this was told us by Bamidele Aturi of blessed memory at one of the workshops, he said when they go campaigning under NCP, vote for us, even market women will be saying second page. What is second page? We have had all your Dogon Turenji, you have had everything you have said. Give us something for us to know you are serious. And that's what encourages the culture of corruption. Because failure to give means that you are not seen as a frontline candidate. Today, as an aspirant who are even yet to purchase a form, the moment you declare, your house become a maker of salt to all manner of people wanting you to resolve their personal problems. Oh, your son has just gained admission, as if you are the one that gave back to him. He has just gained admission to the university. I need money to pay for his tuition. Your wife, that is his own wife, is sick and needs money for some, Medicare. And all of that is put on the aspirants. It doesn't matter whether you are even occupying a public office. It is about self. And people have this notion that for you to even venture to contest election, you must have a deep pocket. So the earlier they get out of you, and that's why they confer on you honorary, excellency. You become your excellency from the day you declare you become, incoming governor, the incoming senator, and all manner of things are said about you that are actually meant to get some things out of your pocket. So it's a worrisome development that even legal provisions alone, as copious as they are, cannot deal with, because it also has to do with culture. It has to do with culture so much so that people feel that, look, this is our cocoa season. We have to come and harvest some part of whatever is the largest. And the politicians have not also helped matters. You could say the fact that APC put his nomination form at 100 million was to kind of checkmate proliferation. That's not the appropriate word to use. To checkmate too many contestants. In 2014, there were only 5 that contested under APC in Lagos during the primary. In 2018, it was only President Muhammadu Buhari. But today, you will see close to 30 people who have indicated interest. 100 million for a form.
Regardless of that.
People still didn't feel that it's intimidating enough to scare them off, wanting to contest.
Jide, let me hold you for a moment. I will return to you. Thank you for your opening contribution. Let me take my question to Barrister Abubakar Tanimo. And I know that you're very conversant with the Electoral Act 2022, and it makes provision for over 60 items that fall within the electoral offense. And some of those, again, come under what former INEC chairman described as pre-election electoral offenses. And Jide has captured some of those as being part of, corruption. But from activities so far under the pre-election matters, what are you reading about the behavior of our politicians, even towards those provisions?
Basically, the facts are glaring. The Nigerians are can feel the import of what the politicians are doing, and it shows that they don't really care, because the fact remains that unless politicians are prosecuted for the offenses that they committed, they will continue to ride on the back of impunity. Just recently, some convicted politicians were granted pardon, and what does that portend? It means for every offense they committed, even if they are punished, they will be pardoned. So INEC, as they have it today, a lot of people have clamored for it, and I quite agree and share that sentiment. They are overburdened. They cannot conduct election, register political parties, at the same time be saddled with the responsibility of prosecuting offenders. The various other security agencies like the police have not really helped matters. We see these offenses on a daily basis. The question that comes to mind, do you expect an ordinary Nigerian that is witnessing inducement, bribery, to go and report a politician that has military personnel, that has police personnel, that have convoys of, we talk about insecurity, but go and see every aspirant that is contesting. They move with an average of 4 to 5 policemen. These are all abuses that are glaring before the eyes of even the security personnel and agencies, and nothing is being done. And I assure you, there's a trend, there's a trajectory that will continue, because if not, even those that have been found wanting after lengthy years of litigation, after humongous resources that have been expanded in prosecuting their case, they only spent maybe a year going to 2 and they are pardoned. So it's like a reward system that is in place to reward those that have thrived on the back of impunity, to continue to abuse our laws. We shouldn't keep the legality, as one of my discussants rightly pointed out. There's no amount of copious law that will change the habits of the politician. They are desperate, they want power at all costs, and they are ready to do anything.
So it's business as usual.
It's business as usual. In fact, this time around is business unusual, because they are going to exacerbate the already political landscape. Now we are talking of humongous resources being deployed. We've seen it from the purchase of forms. We've seen it from the permutations that are going on. Humongous amount of money are being deployed, and nothing will really change. Rather, things will continue to exacerbate, and it means that the average Nigerian will have no place in the political dynamics.
Tanable, business unusual. Thank you very much there for your initial.
It's not usual.
Yeah, for your initial comments. We'll return to you because of the conversation. I want to keep the Federal Commission and Code of Conduct Bureau to hear what the other analysts are saying. Alwar Rafsanjani, well, you are smiling. So apparently, you have no concerns at all about what's going on in terms of. So let's hear your concerns.
I'm the one that really has concern, because apart from transition monitoring group that I chair, that we observe, different electoral cycle in the country, I'm also concerned as head of Transparency International in Nigeria about the corruption in the political system. So Nigerians have been shortchanged, and this is something that it is possible to reverse. I'll give you an example. In 2014, the current president got a lot of Nigerian supporters across the country using their own personal resources as small traders as they are to print posters for him. And we know in the past also, people were doing politics of ideology. I grew up in Kano as I saw how PRP was running. There was no dashing money to anybody. Now, what is happening now over the years is totally commercialization of the political system in the country. So what do? You do investments on a particular candidate or political parties. By the time they get into power, you get the juicy contract, you get the juicy appointment, not bothering about governance. So the losers are Nigerians. That is why we have been advocating and campaigning against vote buying. One of the major threats we have in democracy in Nigeria is vote buying. Also, the undemocratic ways political parties operate in Nigeria, because the fraud starts from the political party. If the political party is not democratic, it is not also complying with its own rules and also the Electoral Act law, then it creates avenue and possibility for even wider corruption. For example, members of a particular party, political party, they are not, carried along in the decision making. In fact, your membership is only on the basis of, the fact that you want to come and capture power. So it is not, on the basis of ideology. It is not on the basis of the fact that there's a programs in the party manifesto that can actually bring about good governance in Nigeria. So it is just a platform for capturing power, and that is why it is commercialized. Because if it is a contest of ideas, programs, progressive programs for that matter, you would have seen that money will not be the only determining factor of selecting a member. You can be very popular in your political party. You can get the people following you. You can be not even associated with the corruption. But as long as you do not bring money in this current contest we are, you are not going to go anywhere. So use of money to buy up the party official, to also use that excessive money to gain support, or to purchase voters support, is one of the major problems we have in political corruption. Now, if you look at most people who have stolen money in this country, the only thing they do now, they invest into politics and politicians, so that when the government is formed, they recover the money and make more profit. We had example of Anambra, even when Ngigi tried to disagree with the arrangement again. Some people put him there and they were taxing him every month. And when he tried to resist, you know what they did? They bundled him out. They even kidnapped him. So the system has not changed. And because of the impunity you have in the land, that is why this continue. And this 2023, unfortunately, sadly, it has commenced with such kind of also very retrogressive and unfortunate development, where we see clearly how political parties, like it's been said, have put in their nomination forms to the tune of 100 million. By the way, that is a 0% of what they are spending now. That 100 million is completely 0%. If you follow the trends on what they are doing, then you also have people who are pregnantly abusing the electoral law and even the morals. In the past, we've seen people who were even elected as governor. When they want to contest, they resign. Abubakar Rimi in Kano, he was elected governor. He wanted to go for the second term. Nobody forced him. He resigned because he wanted to give level playing ground. Now, you have ministers and other government officials who are using public taxpayers' money to run their campaigns, using vehicles, using staff paid by government, using the time that they are supposed to be using for work, which is being paid because they are also being paid salary and allowances. That is political corruption. Influencing, using your office for your personal agenda. And that is why civil society organization came to say, look, apart from even the Electoral Act that says that you have to resign, even your party tells you that you have to resign 30 days before the primaries. They ignore that one. Now, what we are saying is that it is not fair that sensitive public officials are running campaign, jeopardizing governance without them resigning. President does not even need to give you directive. Already the electoral law is there. And for those who have gone to get kangaroo, judicial pronouncement over the debate over section 842, clearly you know that the judiciary have no power to make law. The only body recognized by our law is legislature. Legislature makes law, amend law. And if you have an issue with that section, you need to go back to legislature to seek for amendment. But to now go and get kangaroo judgment on that just to scuttle democracy and wishes of Nigerians, it is absolutely unacceptable, and it is also tantamount political corruption. The legal framework cannot be manipulated if you want to pre-corruption. When you manipulate the electoral process, that is already, political corruption. So I think, it is possible to redeem all these problems if we have the will, because the impunity and lack of sanction of the perpetrators, who happen to be also the people that benefit from this, are the major problem we have. So it is a lost opportunity from 2014 when people genuinely in Nigeria, came out to show that it is possible to change things, because we have not had in 2014, 2015, we didn't see that vote buying as prominent as it was in 2019 when the vice president actually went around doing, his trader thing, which they have not also stopped in this 2023.
Okay, Musa Rafsanjani, you're saying as it was between 2014 and 2015 when change was seen to be possible, so it could be if we have the political will.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me bring in Reverend David Ugolo, who is Executive Director of African Network for Environmental and Economic Justice, with us. We know that the campaign proper hasn't started yet. What we are seeing now are campaigns, or rather consultations, if you may, for party primaries. But be that as it may, I'd like you to share with us what you, the elements of corruption you are observing, even at this stage, pre-election stage, and whether the Electoral Act is strong enough, I don't know, for want of words, to actually check some of those practices, if it has the force, the legal force, to bring those who do not comply with it to book.
Again, thank you for this opportunity to be part of this important conversation. And I also want to thank my colleagues there, Rasanjani and Gideon Joe and others who have also dealt extensively. So there was no need of a repetition of trying to give definitions or clarifications on the issue of political corruption. They've done enough, they've given an example, and they've provided a clear character of what it really means, and using Nigeria as a context. And as you know, Nigeria is not the only country that you have this problem. And I think that for us to, again, maximize our time very well, we should look for opportunity for solution. I think my colleagues have said it all the problems associated with the election. Now, I think, like you rightly said, is the Electoral Act sufficient enough to ensure a clean election? I don't think so. And nowhere in the world, one single law, whether political law or electoral law, do err to ensure that there is a clean election. We must look the whole entire system, and the culture is very important. The people themselves is very important, and the political will, the leadership is very important. Now, just referring back to where we are coming from, if you recall in 2014 and 2015, one major factor why President Buhari was elected was the issue of corruption. And if you look at the corruption perception index, Nigeria was at a low point in 2015. And so when President Buhari was elected on the basis of corruption mandate, the corruption reduced within this period of 2016. And Nigeria climbed with 2 points in the corruption perception index. And now, where are we now? In 2021 now, Nigeria has scored 24 points within the weighting system from 1 to 100. When you have 100 in the corruption perception index, you are seen as a clean country like Denmark. But when you have something below 50 like Nigeria, so between 2015 to 2021, because the corruption perception index of Transparency International was released in January 2022. It shows that we are really, really not doing well, that things have really gone badly. And so now we're going to election next year. And before the election, now you can see the drama what is happening. So how do we ensure that the Electoral Act can help clean the system? Now, there are other legal framework within the country that empowers the law enforcement agencies to play their role. And this brings me to the responsibility that is within the EFCC, the ICPC, the Code of Conduct. I'm happy that the representative of the Code of Conduct is there. Are these institutions playing their role? And I'm happy that the EFCC and INEC have agreed to partner. So what the right language to ensure that there is a clean election in 2023 is partnership and collaboration. The civil society do have their role. The law enforcement agency have their role. The president of the country, who was elected on the mandate of anti-corruption, also have responsibility to create the political environment. And so in moving forward, what can the EFCC do? What can the ICPC do? And then what can the Code of Conduct do? So that, and they can reinforce the legal framework within the Electoral Act to ensure that those who are corrupt, those whose means of livelihood are not verifiable, do not gain entry to buy the electoral process. And so, and that's where I must commend President Buhari for recently signing into law the Proceed of Crime Act. Now, within the Proceed of Crime Act, POCA, there is a framework of non-conviction-based approach. And as an anti-corruption expert, I think that is the way to go. It provides now the EFCC, ICPC in complementing their existing legal framework to ensure that these politicians who are currently involved in buying their way can be put into jail. It make it more easier to verify their means of livelihood. For example, if a presidential candidate is buying an election form with 100 million, it's very easy. NFIU is there. They have all the source, how the money moves in this country. But my friend said it all. When those who are supposed to be the people to ensure to implement the law, they are the one breaking the law, it becomes very difficult. So national institutions are compromised. And it is not just Nigeria alone. It happens everywhere. So we must look for our creative way to solve this problem. And that's why I must encourage my colleagues that if we look into the national existing legal framework are not very helpful, then we must also look for external territorial legal framework which do complement our internal country. If you look at the Pandora report that was released, Nigeria was one of those 10 countries that Transparency International identified as country that is in a distress situation that require urgent action to deal with the challenge of political corruption. The Pandora paper, the Panama paper, Nigerians were reported politicians. And who are those politicians? They are the politicians that are in power in Nigeria today. It's pretty difficult to challenge the system when those politicians are in total control. So they decide the law, they literally, they occupied it, the National Assembly, they occupy it. Then the political process, they occupy it. They make the law, they interpret the law, and they're in power. So we cannot continue to complain. So what can we do as a country? And it brings us back to the challenge with the citizens, with the people. How can we mobilize? Is there political incentive not to be corrupt in Nigeria? That's a big question we must all ask. If you are not a corrupt person, like my good friend, like Kingsley, for example, if Kingsley decide to pick the presidential candidate or a ticket, will Nigerians vote for Kingsley? That's a big question we must all ask ourselves. And if we are able to provide answer, I think we'll be beginning to provide a direction on how we should respond. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about how can we strengthen EFCC and ICPC? How can we strengthen the Electoral Act? How can we make sure that the Nigerian people who normally ask money when the presidential candidate comes for campaign, they will stop doing that? Particularly when you see the patron-client culture system that is so enmeshed in the system. Everybody is involved. So rather than pointing finger, what is the way forward? EFCC must look into this new POCA law and use it very well. ICPC must work with the poker law. And then our system, the issue of corporate transparency, beneficial ownership, all the companies that are involved in business in Nigeria, who are the owners? How can we trace the owner to this politician? We need to invest more resources in preventing them not getting the ticket. And if they get the ticket, how do we ensure that we crowdsource information to expose them and then bring some pressure to bear? And the last creative way the election was carried out was that we can begin now to campaign internationally to ensure that corrupt politicians don't get visa out of the country. Wherever their children are, we track them down. For example, you see what is happening at the school level. If the political elite of the country, their children are in the university in Nigeria, Nigerian university will not be closed down. So there is an incentive of the behavior. How do you make sure you create a system that will end the culture of impunity? I think that is the way forward. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, the Reverend David Ugolo, for your comments and also for your kind words about me. Obviously, you were not with us last week, and I did inform our guests who were on the various programs that we had early last week, as well as our viewers, that outside the gates of the NTA, I had a number of support groups who had donated money, and they were waiting for me to end the program so that they could give me the expression of interest and nomination forms. And of course, about 2 or 3 groups, in fact, we are almost thinking of getting road safety to control the traffic, that was massed out there. But after extensive consultation with my constituents and with my other colleagues, I have decided for now, to assist in ensuring that the next 1 year it's something that we all can manage and ensure that the very best for our people. So for now, my aspiration is in abeyance.
I wish I wish that said that to me. We're looking for as many female contenders that we would have, you would have told your supporters to support any female aspirant.
My supporters said that their support was not immediately transferable. So I'm sure that next time around we will sort that out. Thank you very much, Claire. All right, so now back to more serious business. Honorable Ehiozuwa Agbonaima, you've listened to the comments by the other guests. They are, of course, public affairs analysts as well as very well-known figures in the anti-corruption fight. And your bureau is one of the anti-corruption agencies. Just tell us, what is the bureau seeing in the meantime, and what is the way forward?
Thank you very much for having me, and let me appreciate all my friends that have spoken. I think I've listened attentively. My brother, Reverend Golo, thank you, and again, to all Nigerians. You see, unfortunately, this country, whether you like it or not, there's no other country rather than this, our country, Nigeria, that every one of us collectively have a role to play to bring it to bear the menace of corruption in this country. And having heard all their submission, very, very much encouraging, because it bothers me. Born in this country, left this country when I was young, spent 31 years in America, coming back to see my own country. And it's so disheartening what I see, because we are sitting on a keg of a gunpowder. I'm not here to have, blame games. Rather to be able to have solution, how we all can come together in solving the problem of Nigeria. Because Mr. President Buhari cannot solve the problem of Nigeria alone. Neither any one of my colleagues here. So it's going to require the effort, collective effort of every Nigerian, patriotic Nigerians. Because seeing a crime be committed and refusing to report the scene of that crime to the nearest law enforcement agency, you are as guilty as the man or woman who committed that crime.
But the Code of Conduct Bureau has a responsibility. Yes. So
now,
far,
the Code of Conduct Bureau, before the Code of Conduct Bureau, of course, I have worked in states. I was board of director Nigerian Railway, to the glory of God. I contributed my quota. I was a member of House of Representatives, the 8th session. Thank God the proceed of crime bill, money laundering bill, I was part and parcel of it. I worked so hard because of the fact that the corruption index in our country was so bad. Now, coming to Code of Conduct Bureau, I believe that the Code of Conduct Bureau is saddled with the responsibility of preventing measure of this issue of fighting corruption. But when you go back and really look at what is happening, either there is a ploy to handcuff, strangulate the Code of Conduct Bureau in a way. Today, Code of Conduct Bureau is enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, with almost 14 codes. If we're able to abide by these codes, there's no way we'll be talking about corruption. Because we must put a preventive mechanism to fight from happening, from taking place. I think our forefathers saw the wisdom that before, when you are appointed as a public officer, you must declare your asset. And when you are leaving, you must also declare to see if your lifestyle is commensurate with the money, your salary, your wages. Today, what do you see? When you see some public officers owning estates, owning luxurious vehicle properties everywhere, all over the country, even abroad, the Code of Conduct Bureau is saddled with responsibility of fighting the menace of corruption. But have we gotten the huge support? Let me tell you, there's a huge dilemma. If we have to fight corruption, like Mr. President said, if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. To do that, how can Code of Conduct Bureau in the 21st century be giving less than $1 billion budget with 36 states, including FCT?
Sorry. Yes, because we're looking at, corruption and our political process, and the CCB is one of the agencies that has the responsibility to check corruption and corrupt practices. So far, let us know what the steps. All the agencies have their challenges, because if we are still talking about business even going to another level, unusual level, it means that the agencies have not,
Please, do me a favor.
a gap.
When I'm talking,
Yes.
you ask me a question. Don't interrupt me. Let me finish.
No. Sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I need you to clear. Sorry.
I'm going to go to that.
Yes,
allow
please.
me to present my case.
No, but we don't have the time. We don't have much time.
No, but
we don't have. You need to go to the point so that we have other.
I'm going to is let me tell you. I have to let Nigeria know that we have issues.
This is just a 1-hour program.
It doesn't matter. The little time I have to present myself that Nigerians, as a Nigerian, the Nigerians need to know what is happening. The Code of Conduct is a business in fighting corruption and abuse of public officer. Every public officer are expected to abide by the rules and regulations as a public service. Now, do we do that? What will it take for us to over 10,000 public officers The little that we are doing, at the time, the CJN in this country, the Code of Conduct Bureau, did everything humanly possible to fight the menace of corruption. But when you fight corruption, corruption fight back at you. Today, we are doing everything humanly possible. Thank God to ICPC, EFCC, we are all collaborating together in monitoring, which I am the head of monitoring. Thank God all my friends are here. We must collaborate together to fight this menace. It's a challenge to every one of us, including you, the media.
So you have been monitoring the political process so far. What are your findings?
The issue of the electoral processes in Nigeria, they've said so many things here, but nobody mentioned INEC. Apart from others, political, gladiators, the aspirants, the Nigerian people who they have enumerated in their own various ways and means. I believe that the only way we can solve the menace of corruption is information gathering and in collaboration with other civil society groups like them to ascertain and to see the ways and means how to put a preventive measure. It is about preventive measure. It's because Nigeria, we are not a reactive, we have to be proactive, not reactive. We're always reactive. We are not proactive. Putting preventive measure is the number one fundamental issue here. The bond of contention is preventive measure. That was the reason why Code of Conduct Bureau was, put in place. But to do that, you need resources. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You need resources to do that. The little we are doing, you might be shaking your head, but I'm saying, I'm telling you, without resources, you cannot move mountain. The Code of Conduct Bureau today, where we are managing, let me tell you this. It pains me to my innermost bone. This is not the country. The fact remains that Mr. President is doing everything. And guess what? There are some people that want to sabotage the effort of the government. Some of the civil servants, some of the public servants, even Nigeria as a nation have a role to play. And this is what they are talking about. We have to discuss it. We have to look for a solution, how to combat this menace. Thank God the electoral, Mr. President signed 3 bills into law. Money laundering, process of crime, and terrorism bill. Hopefully, it's not about bill. We have a lot of laws. We have a lot of bills. We are adhered to the 3 principal tenets of democratic doctrine to really wage in and look into these bills that we have. Do we obey laws in this country? Do we, as an individual, as a citizen, are we patriotic enough to say this is our country? Today, you look at the corruption that's eating us deeply. It's a total cancer. It's a cancer that we are just playing with, toying with, seriously. So money given to you to do the needful, to put Nigeria right. A country by now, no electricity in the 21st century. And nobody is talking. We discussed about $16 billion for power project. The former government.
Okay.
And people were writing us that is not within our jurisdiction. Corruption must be fought to the logical conclusion. And we all deserve to do it together.
Honorable Monima, thank you very much. I mean, it looks like it's an opportunity for the Code of Conduct Bureau to let the public know some of the challenges that you are faced with, so that if we are looking for solutions and you are one of the anti-corruption agencies, so look, strengthen that agency and then see what it can also do. Earlier, Joe raised the point that instances of corruption relate not just to see and buy or money in the electoral process. It also relates to abuse of office or misuse of state resources, as well as denial of state of resources to all in the process of that. We're going to have to take a short break now, assuming we're all right. So the director says that we can continue with the conversation. One element, and you find this also in the code of conduct in the schedule to the Constitution. One element that has come up in our electoral process has to do with the cultural dimension. That namely, yes, you go to visit people, and our culture permits you to pay homage. And it is not only here. I mean, it's in some other cultures, you also have that example. But related to the political process, some persons argue that it is corrupting. Jide, you made that point earlier. How can we overcome this cultural issue, almost cultural reflex of saying, look, I mean, from your cap now, it looks like you are contesting. You're not those who have obtained the form. So you come to visit, you come to go and visit some people, and you say, okay, page 2. This is the page 2 that you are leaving with them to read. So how do we overcome that so that they are satisfied with page 1 and then move on? Yeah, before we come to you, let's Jide raise the issue. Yes.
Quite unfortunately, Kingsley, I really don't have that answer because the Nigerian populace have been impoverished, and they see ostentatious lifestyle of this political class, political elite. I mean, people are amazed that we have cheapened 100 million, as if it's just like you are paying. Like it's 1,000 naira that is being paid. And you know, the Dele Abiodun of sang a song in Yoruba that, if you are poor, it's you that is poor. Poverty is relative because there are quite a number of very rich people in Nigeria. And when you go to pay, because who are the people that you even want to go and pay homage? There are people who are well-heeled. There are people who are, and we have, Rafsanjani talked about commercialization of the political process. It is we that commercialize it. And we have opened people's eyes to see that it's an opportunity for them to also get, even if it's crumb from the political elite. Because in those days of Abubakar Rimi and Balarabe Musa and Aminu Kano and the rest of them, it's the people that will even contribute money to support you. That's when crowdfunding really had meaning. Mm-hmm. We saw what happened with Shekara in Kano, in this Fourth Republic. There is a man who retired from civil service as, I think, PAMSEC or or former
mathematics teacher.
And he defeated an incumbent who has a federal might. And that's Kwakwanso in 2003. And people were the one even providing, fueling the vehicle and all of that. That is politics of idealism. But that is an isolated instance that people will even use their resources. Now look at what is happening now. Let's pick the CBN governor. Youth groups, who should even look for one of them to support and mobilize and do crowdfunding for, while mobilizing resources for somebody who has not also told you is contesting. Almost a month ago, this youth group said they've raised 67 million for somebody who could afford to pay that 100 million. Why are they doing that? Because he's holding a position of influence. Why did people not pay Buhari's 27.5 million in 2014 when our president had to go and take a bank draft, overdraft, allegedly, to pay his nomination form? But in 2018, a group had to pay 45 million naira for him to be able to contest in 20. Could he not, as a sitting president, afford 45 million in 2018? It tells you that people, when you occupy a position of influence, it's like the biblical saying that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Because those who need those resources are not getting it. People of ideas, people who have something to offer. Rather, it is those who already are billionaires that you will still see. And I wrote in my column in The Punch last week, the politics of these quantum groups saying that they are buying you nomination for. One, it may well be you Nicodemously channeling the resources to those groups to go and buy.
Are you saying me? Are you saying me?
Not you, not you as a person.
Okay, so
Nicodemously and surreptitiously giving those, because you see Atiku Abubakar saying that a group bought him nomination form of 40 million. This is somebody who is rich in dollars, who is a billionaire in dollars. He can afford it. Why will a group still pay? Meanwhile, there are young people.
Because the group loves him.
But there are young people with ideas who are brilliant, who can make better, who can make contributions to national development, who are looking for resources and are not getting it. So what we are saying invariably is that this culture of paying homage and leaving cola behind, that it will not end. It will not end because our traditional rulers are even looking forward to it. When you say you want to, and there is something I saw when these frontline politician announcements are going, I saw the same crowd pledging loyalty and support to the same different category of persons. I didn't want to be too specific. I saw some political juggernautes today. This candidate, this aspirant comes to meet you and say, well, you are the best thing after the birth of Christ. We are fully in support of you. And that same day or following day, another aspirant comes, you are pledging the same loyalty to that same person. Why is that happening? Why? Exactly. So
do you expect them to be confrontational, to say, no, we supported Claire yesterday, don't come to us,
let's make it very clear. And that is why we talk about the fact that, it is possible to redeem this when you are running a political party that is based on ideology and principles. What we have now, at least the two major political parties, today you are in this party, next day you move from that party. So it is not based on ideology or convention or programs that will lead to good governance in Nigeria. It is simply a platform for capturing political power for personal use, not even for public use. Because if it is for public use, we would have seen a lot of dramatic development changes from 1999 to date. But what you see is that today you are in PDP, next day you are in APC. So with that kind of mindset by our politician, there's nothing that can positively change in terms of delivering good governance. Look, democracy is not about looting. It is not about igniting all this violence and tension and impunity. It is an opportunity for citizens to be involved, to participate in socio-economic and political development of their country and their communities. And you have already killed the democracy at grassroots level. Look at what they have done at local government level. They've killed virtually local governance. And that's why, a lot of things, focus is not being given. If you are not able to have, quality governance at grassroots level, you will have this escalation, at national and state level. So I think it is important and it is very possible that we can return politics of ideology, politics of issues. Candidates now are not talking about even their party manifesto. How many of them did you hear them talking about, for example, PDP or APC? They are talking about themselves. And ideally, it is the party that is supposed to be a major thing. What are the programs that you have in your party? On the basis of the programs of your party and on the basis of track record of that political parties, then you can be able to convince people to come, But at the way it is now, it is just a rented and commercialization process that you have now. Okay. So today, if you have money, you can get all this crowd, the same crowd, you get it, and even during campaign, just what you will see what will happen.
Okay, Musa, we'll have to take the questions, be brief with in our comments so that it goes round before we finally, call it a day. Let me bring in Reverend David Ugolo to also speak on this issue. And Reverend, the topic we're dealing with is checkmating corruption in electoral process, and you rightly captured it. All the issues, the challenges have been talked about. you said what we need to look at is the way out. And you mentioned the responsibility of the anti-graft agencies. Now, given the limitation of their resources, as my brother here, did complain about the strength of the Code of Conduct Bureau, what practical steps can they begin to take, even within this pre-election stage?
Very much. First, I want to thank you. This is quite very instructive. That's why I recommended that Nigerians, we all know about the problems. Even my mother in the village, the grassroots farmers and the people of Nigerians, they are familiar with the problem. And I'm sure that when Dr. Kisley asked Jide, what is the solution? And I'm sure Jide was very clear because of the overwhelming problem. He said he's not too sure he has the answer to that. But let me also say that there are good practice in tackling corruptions around the world. The corruption we'll be talking about is political corruptions, and who are those characters that are mostly associated with it? Are the politically exposed persons, and then at the same time, because of the kind of patron-client culture that has been created, you must give. And I'd like to quickly just identify some of these key norms that sustain these corruptions. One, they say, waiting day for us, waiting day for the boys. Jide mentioned another one, page 2. Then another one associated with some of the political parties, share the money. And then the other one, again, if you join us, your sin is forgiven. These are the conventional norms that we have now accepted within ourselves. And this is actually what is the big problem. So, is there incentive to be deviant, not to toe the line of this process? If you were a presidential candidate, you choose not to share the money, will you be able to win the election? Let's be very frank. It's no. So, how do we build a culture that will challenge this existing culture? And who will champion that? And so that brings me to the issue of political will. In the study of anti-corruption, the issue of political will is dealt with extensively. Now, if you look the commentary from our brother from CCD, it shows clearly that there is a challenge in the executive and that there is not enough resources. And I can tell you, all over the world, anti-corruption agencies are faced with the challenge of enough resources. But the only way you come to overcome it is the political will of the leadership. And so if you measure the political leadership, the political will of the leadership between President Buhari, President Jonathan, and Obasanjo, because in my master thesis in Sussex, my focus was analyzing this political will in ensuring that corruption is tackled. Now, using the CPI index, you will see that when President Buhari was elected, within a space of 2 years, our anti-corruption image improved. But after 2016, down to where we are today, we're in a very bad state. It has gone down very badly. And the kind of information that is coming out now in the political pre-election before 2023, if we are not careful, it will be very damaging in the next 2022 corruption perception index. So in moving forward, there are social norm approach in tackling corruption. So instead of saying that waiting day for us, we can also turn it around that share the money, lose the election. That kind of approach. How can we advocate for that? So we must start from at the councillor level, because this issue is not what you can solve overnight. If you can see that a presidential candidate has reached, like, for example, Tinubu, Abubakar, all these names, they can still tell you and I, that farmers raised their form to buy 100 million form. How do you challenge that? It's for NFA. There are existing legal system. Every money as it moves across the country, the government is aware. So we shouldn't be deceiving ourselves. It is only when President Buhari wants the election to be clean, because he's the one who has the power. few months ago, I called on President Buhari to please support the passage of Proceed of Crime Bill. And I want to thank him again for the passage. And now we now have an existing law. But you know the great innovation about this law? Now the EFCC and ICPC now have a legal instrument on which they can actually now carry out what they call non-conviction-based approach. And it's the best tool used all over the world. In England, they have the unexplained wet order. When what you are doing is not commensurate with your income, you will be put to jail and your asset will be confiscated. And if you look at politically exposed persons in Nigeria, the agencies that are responsible to make this happen, they are not connected. It's very difficult then coming together because of the political challenge. Don't shy away from it. You recall that in APC, for example, the ruling party, people will say, once you have a corruption case, once you join a party, you will no longer have a problem. That kind of sense, how do we change it? So EFCC can now use this new law. And I encourage EFCC very strongly. The new poker law, they should use the non-conviction-based approach. All the political party presidential candidates, we must be able to see if they have a visible wet. And if they claim that some groups are supporting them, we also need to uncover those groups. Who are these groups? What are companies that are associated with them? And the interesting aspect and success story about it is that I must also commend the president. The Corporate Affairs Commission Act has also been reformed. That ownership of companies in Nigeria today, you can know them. And so whatever any vehicle that you use in perpetuating any fraud pre the election, it can be uncovered. So the political will now falls on EFCC, ICPC, CTB to work together. And we as civil society, what can we do? There are now broad open source intelligence we can gather. Every politically exposed persons in this country do have data on them. And we can use it to unpack them. And that is the only way we can begin to solve the problem. Because the issue of corruption in Nigeria is not what you can solve overnight. We must look for a pillar of integrity. And if we can identify any of the pillar of integrity, we all can build what they call collective action. And when you talk about collective action, it involves the politician, involves the private sector, it involves the civil society, it involves everybody. Because we must also demonstrate that to be clean, there's an incentive. And how do we create that incentive? It's to encourage those who will not toe the line of waiting day. Those who will not accept to share money. Those who will not, again, say, waiting day for the boys. Those who will not answer, how do we accomplish phase 2? Accepting these social norms are tackled and there is incentive in tackling it, I wonder there will be no solution. But my challenge and the opportunities that is opening is what we should now begin to pursue. The non-conviction-based approach provision in the Proceed of Crime Act, the CCB, the issue of you have to disclose your asset, and then all the companies that are associated with it, and then the law and the Nigerian Bar Association, they need to really help Nigerians to ensure that no legal firm are used to perpetuate any of this crime in the country.
All right, David Ugolo, thank you very much. We're going to have to take a short break. It's a very interesting conversation. I mean, you have 5 guests packed to unpack the issues around corruption in the electoral process. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll see how much more we can maximize. You're welcome back, and just in time for us to appreciate our guests on what is obviously now the first installment of this very interesting conversation on checkmating corruption in the electoral process. It is in the interest of the polity and the health of all that corruption is checkmated in the electoral process, so that ultimately those we want to be in positions of power to get there. We've touched on a number of issues. Some of them, of course, are left hanging. And once we return to this subject matter in the second stanza, we'll have the opportunity of drilling further into it. Jide Ojo, regular and Good Morning Nigeria, thank you for being our guest. And thank you also for reminding us of what page 2 means. We will read that page 2 in the second edition. Ahmed Abubakar Tanemu, legal practitioner, human rights activist, and former banker. Business unusual. Thank you very much. How can we make the political process business unusual for us in Nigeria? Thanks also for your comments. The Reverend David Ugolo, Executive Director, African Network for Environmental and Economic Justice. It's been our delight having you this morning. Honorable Ehiozuwa Agbonayima of the Code of Conduct Bureau, where he's a federal commissioner and also head of monitoring. A number of issues still for the Code of Conduct Bureau to dwell on. We hope we have the opportunity of having your perspective or the perspective of the Bureau in the second part of this conversation. Thank you for being our guest. Awal Musa Rafsanjani, head of Transparency International in Nigeria. We thank you for being our guest and also involved with the Transition Monitoring Group where he's chair. Rafsanjani, a delight having you this morning. All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you for tuning in. The program returns to same time, 7 in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I thought installment was associated with money payment, but I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.